Yuma Frugalistas, and welcome. Today I have a special guest, and of course, all of my guests are special. Today's guest is someone who I have invited back to talk again about women rebuilding their finances, especially in this case, using property after divorce or separation. Helen Baker is a licensed financial advisor and founder of On Your Two Feet. Helen Baker is a licensed financial advisor and founder of On Your Own Two Feet, a service dedicated to empowering women gain and retain their financial freedom. Helen has a master's degree in financial planning and a second in innovation in change. One not enough, Helen, I love this. Plus a Bachelor of Commerce in accounting. She is author of 3 books on financial planning, and today we're going to focus on her brand new book, Money for Life: How to Build Financial Security from Firm Foundations. Welcome, Helen, and a big congratulations on your 3rd book.
Oh, bless you. Thanks. Nice to be back.
I was really excited to hear from your publicist about your 3rd book, and I really enjoyed reading it. We were talking before, but this comes as a time when I'm preparing to buy a new house with my husband, so selling a unit in my own name and buying something joint. And so much in your book really resonated for me.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. That's great.
Lots of sound advice in there, and I really like how you draw on a lot of real world examples, not with their real names, but of clients you've worked with and stories that you're very well aware of.
I think that's it because people actually can then put the pieces together and go, "Oh, I can resonate with that, or that makes sense to me, or that's my friend or my cousin or my sister." So, yeah, it's great.
Because it's one thing to talk about, strategies on paper, but property particular is quite an emotive thing. I know a lot of investments are, but property, particularly when it's somewhere that you live, is something that it's bricks and mortar, it's a foundation, it's a lot of things.
I think you're right. It's probably a reflection of us. It's about our taste. It's our opportunity to put our own stamp on something. It's where we live. It gives us security. It's so many things than just, yeah, bricks and mortar.
A lot of things. And actually, you begin your book by stating that every house is only as strong as the foundations of which it is built. And you also start with a fairly sobering assessment about how you've seen people lose their homes because of weak foundations. And to go biblical a bit, this reminds me very much about the Bible verse about needing to be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. And I suspect this was not coincidental.
No, it's funny how that comes in my mind a lot as well. It's like if you build it on the rock and everything's protecting underneath and holding it up, it shouldn't come falling down. But if you don't put the right foundations in place and something goes wrong, then, the risk is this whole thing is going to come tumbling down, and no one ever wants to lose their home. That's just awful. So, the good news is there are things that you can do and be proactive, and there may be something that you didn't realize you should be doing, and hopefully protect your house.
But so often you see that that's not the case, isn't it? Like people fall in love with a house or they fall in love with a financial strategy without thinking about whether it's a good foundation for them and their financial health.
Yeah, I think that's right because it is so emotional. And once you sort of, I mean, there's a reason why they have all these shows about how to renovate or how to even go buying your own home. There are so many shows about property. So it's definitely the way that we are wired. The foundations that I tend to talk to, there are 5. And in the whole, what are we up to, about 16 years of advising now, I've never found anybody who could meet my 5 foundation test. So that's good. It means that there is something in there that you can apply and fix so that you can protect what you're building on top.
Wow, so that's obviously quite a high bar, your 5 foundations.
It is, unfortunately. But in a way, it's good because it's like they actually make sense. And, if you get it right, you can move on with in the back of your mind, knowing if something changes, this is my backup plan for that. I've done my best with this part. You're putting all those pieces of the puzzle together.
So I feel like I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but seeing you've written your book and you've been advising on this for a long time, what are your five, or at least what are a few of the five?
Yeah, the first one's the emergency fund, and that's obviously about, if we lose our job or something, changes, something goes wrong with even a little bit of health need or even opportunities that come up, great opportunity to go on a holiday somewhere, we want to be able to have something on the side that's available to us. The second one is called a spending and an investment plan. So I tend not to use the word budget because it's a bit like handcuffs and chocolate, and then we stop eating chocolate, and then all of a sudden we just, oh, I can't live like this. So then we just go and have all the chocolate that's, big family blocks of it.
I
So
also like to avoid the term budget because people freak out about it. They just, I don't know, it's just like it's just confronting. I tend to use the term forecasting.
nice. Yeah, I like spending an investment plan because I want to be able to spend money. I've got to get my hair done. Some people want to get their nails done. I like going to the gym. I play football. There are things and I have to buy groceries, and we have things that we're committed to, insurances, all those kind of things. So if we put those in, we know then we can have the holiday once a year or whatever we're going to do. If it's putting kids through school, whatever it is, that's your spending plan, and then making sure that there's plenty left over as your investment plan and working with that. And then the question with that left over, and it's often different from year to year, but it's like, okay, well, do I put it on my super? Do I put it on the home? Do I buy an investment property? Do I put it in different investment? What do I do with that money that makes sense strategically and from an investment perspective going forward? And then the third one is often where a lot of it falls down, around 3, 4, and 5 more. 3 is those insurances, obviously private health, general insurance, but it's the personal insurances. We're often not aware of the 4. We're often overinsured in one area, underinsured in another area. These are really important, particularly if you're buying a property with someone else, because you might even have your foundations well organised and correct, but they might not. And then obviously their fallback option is going to be you, which puts your financial position in jeopardy. And this is where it all sort of hinges together. 4 is around super, that is an investment of itself. So there's opportunities there, but, it's looking at, don't consolidate until you've sorted out insurance. There's a lot of people talk about consolidation, but there's no danger sign that says, hey, don't do that, because your insurance will go and you might need that, particularly if you've had a health incident or there's a claim that you didn't realise you needed to make. And no policy is exactly the same. So they're really important things around that. But how it's invested, who's the nominated beneficiary, all those kind of things. Are they appropriate? We can, as single women, often leave our super to our mum because we all love our mums, but unfortunately mum is probably not a eligible beneficiary, which means it's going to default to your will, which is number 5. So estate planning, wills, powers of attorney, advanced health directives, all the things we don't want to talk about, but they're reality and we need to tidy them up.
We do, and actually hubby and I are in the process of re-getting our wills done actually. So, and it was actually more emotive than I thought. Like when we had the first briefing session, I'm quite pragmatic in terms of money and I thought it was all fine. And then I came home and I was like, actually, I'm a bit exhausted from talking about,
Yeah.
what happens if we're not there, anymore. I mean, which is going to happen one day, and what is going to happen, like particularly with some family members that we don't really get along with that well, not giving them as much as others. How are they going to feel about that? How are we
Right.
going to manage that so it's not a big issue?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was actually more difficult than I thought it was.
Yeah, it is quite challenging because, guardianship is another one, and often we think, oh, well, my sister or whatever. Oh, I don't want your sister looking after our kids. There are things that come up. It doesn't always have to be ugly, though. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's really great. And people walk away going, oh, I feel better now. I didn't realize, those were things, and I've made decisions, and I'm comfortable. And they're likely never to have to change it again. Really, it's like you don't have to do this thing every single year, and the cost of doing so, and everything, unless it's something significant changes. But it's good just to wrap it all up together. put a bow on it, put it on the side, and just keep thinking about, oh, if this changes, I need to revisit that, and just being aware of some of the pitfalls. And again, they're big things that I pop up in the book so they don't trip you up.
Yeah, and I'm always amazed how families often do disintegrate after someone dies. Like, you would think that most people would be like working together with other siblings to, be equitable and fair. But sometimes people just get, well, actually it's about me and my kids and my family, and I want to make sure we get the biggest share possible, or just have a sort of entitlement mentality that you wonder, where on earth has this come from?
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It is one of the ones that you see a lot where, you think, oh, it's two siblings, for example, and you think, oh, well, it'll be split 50-50, and often it is. But then one of them might have more children than the other one. So their 50% is spread over this many children, and the other side is that. And so then it's the perception of how people feel about, well, this is fair to me. And that's what's... fair is always interesting, different viewpoints. And we've certainly seen a lot of those. We see a lot of good, obviously, a lot of planning goes into it, and children are aware of how it's going to fall and how some of these structures are actually helpful from a tax perspective for them, or keeping their assets in the bloodline. So it's a very positive thing if it's presented in a positive way. And I think what falls down a lot with wills and estates is, this is different to what I expected, and that's the shock. And we still want everybody to have Christmas together, so it's important to make sure it makes sense and it's planned well and everybody understands what's going on.
Yeah, exactly, because it's not just the money or the assets, it's also that feeling that that family member didn't love you as much as the others.
100%. If I go back to my very early days, I remember there was a situation where somebody had 3 children, but they had updated their wills after the second child. And I mean, this gentleman was like in his 50s, I think, when this happened, and the parents had passed on, and he wasn't mentioned in the will. Now, it was something that they had just totally forgotten about. The way the will was worded, it was just saying the 2 rather than all children. It wasn't intentional, but certainly for that person, that was like, dagger to the heart about, they don't value me. They didn't fix up their will for me. It's quite sad, really.
Mm. But back to the book.
Yeah, back to some good bits.
Although you do talk about all of this in your book, and it's really important, and you've seen it all from a financial planning perspective. But
Yeah.
I am really surprised in a good way about the focus that you have about housing. And I say surprised because my experience has been that financial planners often tend to focus on other things, specifically products they can sell, such as self-managed super funds, insurance products, and other things rather than property. In fact, I've had financial advisors tell me not to invest in property and to invest in other
Right.
things. So I'm just want to put that out there to say that this is really quite unique approach that you've taken.
You're right. And I think what drove that was the awareness that there are over 40,000 women in Australia living out of cars, many of them over the age of 17, 80 years old. And when I talk about that overseas, people are like, in Australia,
Yeah, in
because we're the
Australia.
lucky country. So, how is that even possible? And when you look at them, these are not drug people. These are not, they're people who were widowed. Um, some really sad stories. If you look up the Forgotten Women, and they have some of the information on how these things happen and came about, some of these things could have been protected. And so for me, it's just vital for us that as women, we do get a roof over our head. If it's not now, there's a plan to work towards it, as in things we talk about in the book. Do you build your super to buy it down the track? Do you rent vest? What do you do? But getting that security, women are wired for security. We love to put our own things on the wall. We like our sleep at night factor. We don't like a lot of debt usually. But it's important for us to have our own home. And I just thought I didn't want to write another book. I was like, I'm not writing any more books after the last one. But I
Never say
cannot.
never, Helen. You're
Yeah,
such a good writer. In
thank
demand.
you. Oh well, I have good editing people at people who help, but yeah, I just couldn't let it go. I just thought, we have to get the message out there, particularly now when there are so many issues around housing and there are so many issues with relationships as well. I
Yeah.
just thought I just have to get something done, and hopefully it inspires a lot of other people and really helps them and motivates them to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely too. And I think too, there's sometimes a bias against women, particularly older women, renting properties. So that's an additional barrier for them being renters. And not everyone wants to live with their kids, assuming they do have children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is one of the bigger issues as well, because, when we think way down the track for retirement, the money that you live on, that is the age pension, is an assumption that you already own your own home. And even then, it's about $25,000 a year behind what ASFA, so the calculation that says you need about $55,000 as a single person to live on, that number's increased enormously, even so for couples as well. But if you think, okay, 55, you're about 20 to 30 grand behind if you're living on the age pension. So if you have to pay rent as well, how is that even possible? It's really vital that we get that security of our own home to give us a chance at, a long-term future that's enjoyable, and again, for women, it's the women who spend all their life raising kids, looking after parents, grandparents, sacrificing so much. I know men do too, so don't come at me. But, it's like majority are still women. And down the track, they're the ones who could potentially be living out of a car. Or, like you say, couch surfing or living with kids because they're just not ahead. Like, ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ouch. And the recent Hilda, the University of Melbourne and the Melbourne Institute reporting on various things, including how household tasks are performed, continues to show that women do proportionally more housework than men. So I think you're in fairly safe territory there.
We'll see how many abusive messages I get.
Well, it's interesting because the researchers are surprised that it sort of hasn't moved on the needle for many years, actually. It sort of had changed a little bit and then it had sort of stopped in terms of the equality with this.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've come a long way. Like, I look from where we started around when I started, you know, campaigning all these things 15, 16 years ago. And I think now when I look around, there are a lot of things that have changed positively, but just not enough. Like, it's just so slow. It just, it'd be nice if the pendulum swung from one side to the other. Even three-quarters of the way would be good, but it feels like some of it is not. So I'm just going to keep pounding.
Well, there have been some recent improvements, but yes, there is a lot more that needs to be done. The gender
Yeah.
pay gap is still a substantial issue. And I must say, even my husband, who I like to think who is quite enlightened, gets very upset about this. He's convinced that it's a fallacy, and this is based on us both being public servants, and in the public service you get paid being on the same grade. So if everyone's an
Mm.
APS 6, Australian Public Service Level 6, everyone gets paid the same. But what he's not realising is that it's often the men who get selected to go on travel, who get the additional travel allowance, or get paid overtime, or are promoted more quickly compared to their female counterparts. It's all those other range of factors, and he doesn't see that those things have a really profound influence.
Yeah, and I think along with gender pay gap and retirement gap, one of the ones I wrote in the previous book was called what I called the career choice gap. So again, by nature, you will often find it's the women who are working in the childcare centres and the aged care, even teachers, teachers getting paid better than they used to, but aged care workers and childcare workers are grossly different income compared to somebody at an extreme, perhaps that works in a mining sector or any of those, even like hairdressers are often not paid that great for what they do, even though we love them and we need them. But it's
You're not at all looking forward to your hair appointment. Is this because I believe you're about to go on a trip? You really want to get your hair done before you head away?
It's it. It's like, well, I can't do that, so you have to sort it out. But yeah, I think these are the bits that we need to really think of longer term. COVID is somewhat a long time ago now for a lot of people, but I think that highlighted who were the important roles that made a difference in our lives. And it was aged care, it was childcare, it was teachers, it was things that perhaps we didn't value as much as we should have and maybe still don't.
Yeah, and then the funny thing was when they had a budget, all the sort of money went to things like construction and other sectors, traditional male sectors as stimulus. But anyway, don't get me started. That was a long time ago, although it feels like just yesterday
It's
sometimes.
still vivid, isn't it?
It's still
Yeah.
vivid. Still probably a lot of trauma from a lot of people that is not talked about. But anyway, moving
Yeah.
on. So in
Maybe.
your book, you say that property ownership is the single biggest determinant of financial and physical stability as well as quality of life in retirement. And
Mm.
yes, you wrote that. That's a direct quote.
Do I remember that? No, that's good. Yeah, look, I think it is that what we were talking about before about, if you already own your own home in retirement, there are statistics that break down for those who are renting versus those who own their property and the percentage of their funds and how it's broken up for holidays, for discretionary spending, for all of those things. And there is a very big difference to the type of retirement that you can have. Now, obviously, if you had a home and you sold it and you're doing, living here, there, and everywhere and renting and that works with your plan, that's great. But it's the people who just don't have enough that are stuck. If they had a house already paid off, it's probably going to be much more comfortable for them in retirement, but also physically. I mean, no one likes when the property manager comes to your house every 3 months, 6 months, 12 months and looks at everything or tells you can't put that on the wall. The fear that a lot of people feel, the traps that some people get into because they can't afford to live in certain areas. It affects their health, whether it's physical health or mental health. There's a lot at play in terms of that, and that's why it's really important, I think, to try and do our best to get something that we can live in, that we can be proud of, that is our own home.
I'm definitely a big advocate for home ownership, and I think I've always felt quite strongly about that. But when I was suddenly single with two children, that became even more of a focus. And at that time, a lot of other influences, I guess, in the financial independence, retire early movement were really more in terms of the rent invest movement. And a lot of them were like, well, the returns for shares, including the dividends, are really high. So it didn't make sense for them with their plan to own property. But I laugh because most of them were single, and the moment they got engaged or got married, suddenly,
Yeah,
suddenly
the
their
game's
focus changed.
changed.
Is that your experience?
I think so. I think certainly when I think if you move down different periods of time, so if I look at a quote that I used in the previous book, it was said basically between two clients over a couple of weeks, said differently, but the common outcome of it was my 20s was for fun, my 30s was for my career, and now I'm in my 40s. I want to maximize everything I can, so I'm not going to have to work until I'm 70. So I think often, depending on what our focus is at the time, so somebody's focus might at the moment be travel. I want to travel, I want to go and do all these kind of things. Then a home ownership for them at that point in time is probably like a bit like a ball and chain. So maybe shares or something like that is more appropriate for them. The good thing though is as long as you're still investing, at some point you can transition, you can cash in those shares or those whatever and buy property or part do it. And there's so many different strategies. There's things about borrowing to invest in shares as well, or borrowing to buy a property. There's so many different ways that you can do this. It's about what is right for your particular situation and how might those things change on your journey. Like what you're saying, oh, well, what if I partner up and, then my focus will change. How flexible is my plan to allow for these things to happen? And that's a big part of it, is I think avoiding a mistake. And understanding this has flex in it. If I change in that direction or that direction, how would that look for me? And being comfortable in that, knowing this is still positive, it's all good. It's just, timing of different things and different goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and your goals also do shift. I was sharing with you before, and I'll share with the listeners now, that when I bought my 3-bedroom walking distance to Canberra GPO apartment, I was a single mother with 2 kids, and this was really suitable because it was 2 blocks away from the local primary school, and we were able to walk the kids to school every day. When they're a bit older, they were able to walk themselves to school every day and walk themselves back. It was a real blessing.
Yeah.
But over time now, I've repartnered, I've remarried. I've got a teen and a tween. My youngest...
Good luck.
Actually, they're quite good kids, but don't always get so many answers from the eldest.
Yeah.
But it's just different now. Now, their friends actually don't live near us because there's a lot of apartments. They live in another suburb, close to where we're moving actually, which is one of the reasons, where there's more houses. So they don't actually have friends near us. And my youngest plays table tennis, and we can't fit in a table where we live. So it's just completely different lifestyle considerations.
So the cars are going outside and the garage is going to be it?
Pretty much. Actually, it'll probably need to be like that just for all the boxes, at least initially, until I minimalise. But anyway, Zen living.
Nice. Very good.
So now finally, do you have a Frugalista tip to share?
I think the tip I always say is taking action. I think it's always about action. Anything that you're doing that's related to investing or, people will always say, oh, I wish I knew that 10 years ago. I wish I met you 10 years ago. And I think, yeah, me too. But the main thing is you can always do things from where you are. And that's, again, another reason why I wrote that book, because so many people that I met a long time ago who now are retired women with their own home that weren't in a position to do it back then without getting these strategies in place and doing these things. Like, seeing that change people's lives is phenomenal. And so I think, understanding what you can do and then taking action gives you the best chance to get on your own 2 feet and stay there.
Yeah, and it can be scary for a lot of women, as you know, because they worry that they're not good with finance, they worry they're not good with money. And so what do you say to women who worry that they're not good about finance or money?
I understand where they're coming from, because it does have the appearance of being incredibly daunting. And I think this is probably where, and I'm not pumping the book for this reason, I'm absolutely not, so don't
It is a
think
good
that
book.
I am. But
It is a good book. Buy the book.
yeah, people say it's just easy to read, and I learned so much, and they are positive about it. So I think when it's presented to you in a way where it's not so frightening, it's not so overwhelming, and it's simple enough that you can digest it and go, oh, I get that now. Yeah, okay. Then they will take a positive approach. But honestly, do I read many finances books? No, I find them really dull and dry, and and that was a big thing about all my books. I didn't want them to be like that. I wanted it to be something that's just easy to read. Read it on the bus or the train, a few chapters or a bit, learn something, absorb it, put it into action. You'll never be the same.
Thank you, and I totally endorse that. Having read the book, it is very readable, it's easy to read, there's lots of advice there, and there were lots of questions about things that I was thinking through myself, being in a blended family, to be cautious about and, to consider throughout the whole stage of life, including a really useful chapter about about the bank of mum and dad.
Yes. Yeah, becoming so much more common now, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Helen, and all the best for your new book, which I'm sure is going to be a bestseller because it is great. If you are thinking about buying property or you know someone who is, this is a great book, especially if you are starting over. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And as I say, if you don't want your mother-in-law to come and live with you, maybe buy her that.
Great advice.
Bless. All the best. I hope it
Thank you.
helps you.